Hello, I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. Our time together every week, as you know, is about 15 minutes, give or take. And as you also know, in this short form podcast, in addition to sharing my unsolicited thoughts about our industry, I'm also going to share my SEO testing, field data observations, and what I'm actually working on. And I guess this season 6 is probably going to make this maybe the most SEO podcast on the planet at the moment. And I guess it goes to show you that life is just one big set of pivots. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 4 of Confessions. And this week may be classified as a myth buster. Basically, LLMs don't rank websites. They synthesize trust. So what the hell does that mean? And how do we get a piece of that pie? Now, these days, business owners and principals are literally firing their SEO teams and going with agencies that claim they are AI exclusive agencies. SEO is dead, and long live the large language models, aka artificial intelligence. I do think shiny object leadership is and always has been dangerous. And I'll admit, that is one shiny object for sure. But much like plutonium, how can we use AI without burning our brains, businesses, and bottom lines? And I think we all understand the desire for novelty is much easier than this heavy lifting of the execution of what we're trying to do, and especially when it comes to digital marketing. And this kind of shortcut leads to, I guess one could say, shifts of focus that negatively impact the bottom line for our companies and I believe potentially for our clients and customers. Clearly not the LLMs themselves, because they're getting tons of funding from the investor class. So let's go back to that statement. It comes from a LinkedIn post. I will put that URL in here. And in it, a guy was, I think, astutely saying LLMs don't rank websites. They synthesize trust. Okay, so how do they do that? How does AI synthesize trust? Now, on the surface, synthesize doesn't sound like a good thing. It's appealing a name, I think, as cultured meat. And looking at things, we've gone from word of mouth to search to AI, which is to say we've been in the business of synthesizing trust for a long time. We need to get over the ick, and we call it what it is, but I think that basically is probably a decent description for how that's accomplished. Now, I went on the hunt, and I found several write-ups that appear to consistently put this into, I guess, 4 buckets. Maybe there will eventually be more, but for now, it appears to be 4, and I'll share them with you. Social media, which originally I wrote it written out as patterns of human discourse, which sounds very scientific. So how do people talk about companies, services, or products that they use online? So reviews are probably going to be part of that as well as normally what people are writing. Then it talked about repetition across sources. So again, we're not looking at one thing. It's obviously comparing and contrasting, I guess. So now we've got forums, press releases, YouTube transcripts, listicles that get syndicated. All of that makes sense. And it was the last 2 that really caught my eye, at least for this podcast. Schema, which is called structured data. Now this is code, HTML code that lives under the page. Humans don't see it. Only the crawlers do. And the idea is that these web pages, because of this agreed format, this schema.org gave us protocols for how to write this up so they're consistent and machine readable, and to be able to provide information not just about the page, but the topic and the people involved with it, the organizations that they work for, yada, yada. And it looks, I'll be honest, it looks like a schematic, a visual schematic that you've converted into words. It is a pain in the ass to implement, and unless people just stick with the basics. So if you try and go beyond the basics, which of course conventional wisdom is always, the more diversity you have, the more tiebreakers your page can make when things are being decided after it's been crawled. But basically, it's a real challenge. You either get sort of out of the box what everybody else gets, and if you're trying to do something that not everybody does, that's where you start to get into some challenges, because you also got to do it manually. The other thing is obviously your domain, the internal parts of your domain. Multiple pages reinforcing the core concepts. For instance, answering the question, how do you do what you do when you do it? And break that down into what methodology you used, kind of like as you're writing your content. This is what they're looking at. And all of these details can elevate your site-wide authority. And for today, at least for the next 10 minutes, I thought I'd look at the last two, the schema and the domain's internal data, since these are things that we can directly inform and control. Now, these also line up directly with Vizzex, a SEO software tool that I'm involved with that performs to identify ways to connect your blog content on a semantic level beyond the single page. It connects it in a horizontal way so your topics are clear and the bridges between your subtopics are set up and they make sense. And hopefully you're already in the beta. If not, go to Vizzex, Vizzex.ai. Get in today as soon as you can. For the WordPress version, the plugin version, the founder's pricing is really good for now. Won't be that forever. So hurry up and get it while you can. Plus, for WordPress, as part of this beta, you get a 90-day free trial. So that's 90 days we're going to be talking to you. And this is what I call a helpful content analysis tool. And if you're familiar with my research, that will make sense. And if not, I'll put a link in the description. My research discovered that helpful content issue, and this tool helps you create that helpful semantic content that connects your expertise through your entire sites so that the AI can see it. And starting next week, we're going to start the AMAs. Ask me anything for getting set up and what features you have questions about. We know you're busy. My purpose is making these AMAs short, like 15, 30 minutes, because you're busy. And if we're doing our work correctly, you don't need more than 15 or 30 minutes to get the answers you need on how to use the plugin and what's new. All right, so schema and your internal content. So schema is interesting. For years, we've been told that schema helps Google understand your content. And that's kind of, like I said, been a sort of promise unfulfilled. But now with AI, there are some inferences in our discovery that can be misleading about it. My understanding about what schema does comes from Daryl Osborne. And that is the concept that schema simply amplifies what is already present about your brand, your product, your service, already in the sort of sphere of everything that's online. Now, also, I've done some testing which has provided zero confirmation that schema helps index or rank your content, despite what you've been told. So the fact that it amplifies and it makes the connections, that part does have some evidence, especially when we look at the information retrieval methods, specifically the information systems where they vectorize our content. Now, this is my inference on this, okay? So when you have your content being vectorized, it means it's being converted into numerical data. And it makes it easy for these systems to recognize identical and mostly identical data and identify topics. So if the game is getting the information about us noticed by the LLMs, we have some studies. Now, one in particular I chased down was cited in an article on digidop.com. And they said structured data is a secret weapon in SEO, especially for help in getting cited in those AI outputs, the overlays on search. Now, they said there's a study that looked at the impact of schema being present and cited in LLMs, which demonstrated, according to them, a 54% accuracy gains when the structured data is present. Turns out, unfortunately, that's not exactly in line with the study's methodology. It's an inference, but it's not proof. So I was curious about how this study was run. So I took all the information, stuck it in Perplexity, and said, well, how was this study run? And I'll quote the return, okay? And then I'll convert it into regular language. So originally, the organization that ran the study was called Data.World, and they did a benchmark test, which directly measures what I'm about to tell you. So it says the Data.World benchmark directly measures LLM execution accuracy, the query to the SQL or the database match, with KG-derived structured data, not web citations. So basically, in normal people language, this study was conducted with a limited set of documents that were contained within a database, and the study, what the actions were, it was only to use those documents in the retrieval. So the AI was a closed-end sort of, query. And some of those documents had schema and some did not, but it was not operated with live web results, but it was based, again, specifically on only these documents, and that's how they found there was a 54% gain in accuracy. That's not real world. So what we're really looking for is some sort of study, a direct study that looks at actual search results. I did find one. Search Atlas made an analysis of 1,000 plus queries, and they specifically found no measurable uplift in AI citations from the schema on the sites in those searches. Okay, it's a large data set, and it's one study, and don't really know exactly how all that worked, but it would be crazy to say that it meant that schema is dead. Now, likely, schema by itself is not going to be a magic bullet, which is why we can't say were all those pages in that study optimized to the same level, some with schema and some without. That's kind of the only way you can really test that kind of stuff. Now, like I said, the ability of an LLM, AI, to be able to surface the kind of information from like where schema lives, they would have to be able to get it both from the HTML and by rendering. Now, the only AI that I have seen rendering is what's done for Google Gemini, and that they do via the Google Other family of crawlers. I talked all about that in Season 5, Episode 48. It's literally my favorite from Season 5. So if Googlebot is able to do this, Google Gemini, through the Google Other Fetcher and the mobile and the desktop, working as a trio, are going to get your schema. Now, that just came online in November 2025. So I think that's going to be something new, and we're probably going to see this come into play as we move forward into 2026. So, what do we know right now that will aid recommendation in those overlays? And I kind of found some really juicy data, also published in mid-December. I'll put the link to it. It's on thedigitalbloom.com. And the title of it is AI Citation LLM Visibility Report. They have a baseline. It sounded like a real study to me. I'll read you the TLDR. Too long, didn't read, but just know I did read it all, which is why I'm going to I will do a separate episode on how new content gets into the trained AI models. So the correlational study that this article is based on used a data set of 7,000 plus citations across 1,600 URLs. Nice. Here we go. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 to 7 conclusions out of this. So brand search volume, not backlinks, is the number one predictor of LLM citations. Now, the correlation on that was 0.334. Typically, in large studies, anything above 0.20 correlation indicates that whatever you're seeing is probably by design and is not an accident. Sites on 4 or more platforms were 2.8 times more likely to appear in chat GPT responses. So go beyond your website. Princeton GEO research shows optimization can boost AI visibility by 30 to 40%. So let's hear it for SEO. Only 11% of domains are cited by both ChatGPT and Perplexity. So if you're seeing success in one, you may not be seeing success in the other. Wikipedia content represents about 22% of the major LLM training data. So if you're in there, that's a good thing. And adding statistics increases AI visibility by 22%, quotations by 37%. And here is a sobering note. 65% of AI bot hits traffic content published within the past year. Okay. So being as part of my work right now is increasing AI citations for at least 5 different sites through application of adding structure. You might want to listen to the last 2 podcasts if you want to know about more of those details. And I think making sure there are internal semantic links, bridging the subtopics on these sites. That's why I use Vizzex. It makes it super easy to get that in place. So quick recap. Diversify your presence. Optimize your content with links and structure, as well as all the usual suspects. And remember to add some statistics and quotes. You know, they're not crazy things. These are things as marketers that we should be doing anyway to convert. And either way you slice it, looks like getting content optimized is in the top 5 of things to get to increase AI visibility by 30 to 40%. I'll take some of that. That's it for me this week. Do yourself a favor and get into the Vizzex beta for WordPress. What you get is 90 days free trial for the world's first helpful content analysis tool. And our first AMA is going to be exclusive to those in the beta on February 5th, 2026. And Indexilla is my indexation tool, now the exclusive provider of the crawl or no crawl indexation reports for my research, like what I talked today about the Google Other. Now you can find it at indexilla.io. Now, more than ever, AI makes the indexation of your content into Google and Bing essential. Don't leave it to chance. Thank you for listening, and until next week, I'll see you in the SERPs.